Blessings, soul family. I am so excited to highlight one of our BioQuantum team members, Abriana, today. I'm getting chills. She has brought through so much beautiful reflection in her brilliance of astrology. And I have to say, it is blowing my mind. It has really opened up this whole space that we're going to all start playing in, and we want to invite you to play with us. Before we go any further, Abriana, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then we'll go into your DMT code.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jules. So, hi everyone. My name is Abriana, and am, I would just say, like, I've always been a seeker, a seer, and it's just been, I joined kind of the BioQuantum platform in 2019. And since then, my entire life has just changed. And so, I've always had a passion for astrology, and I just couldn't have even predicted how incredibly powerful I would be able to bring my passion through the work that we do in becoming bioquantum. So that's kind of like the inception point was that 2019 when I started doing the work. But as far as astrology goes, it's in my blood. I always tell the story where I actually was wearing a Virgo shirt at a very young age, sitting on Santa Claus's lap. So it's something that has just always been around, always interested me. And yeah, it's just been a super big part of my path. So
That is so beautiful. And so your code that you got is the two, which is the connector, which is so appropriate. It's the communicator, again, so appropriate. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that and let you kind of talk about what that sparks for you, how you feel connected to this code and your work, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
oh, I'm getting full body chills right now because I've I've never really seen the two in this way, but today when as soon as you brought it up, it was just the bridge. Like I saw the bridge of from point A to point B. And so yeah, I guess that connection energy. But it, as holding the space in bioquantum, I've kind of always seen myself as a bridge. Once I really stepped into my mastery, of course, it took a little while for me to attune to the work and everything. But once I did, the bridge aspect really came in strong. And it was like, there's so much here. Like it's important to have bridges to get that out, just wherever it's being called to go and to follow that intelligence where it wants to go. And what I'm doing with astrology is no different. It's bridging. What's coming to me is my friend and I talk a lot about how if you don't work in this work, how to make this work part of your life. And she says, even if you shine shoes for a living, you can shine shoes in the frequency of 963. And that's just kind of what I like to invite people into is that you can connect with this work and then take it into any passion. So that's really what I've done with astrology, is that astrology has always been my long held passion. And I was shown how to connect the work that we do into astrology. So that's kind of what the two's bringing up today, at least.
I love it. Well, it's so appropriate, and I love also that you kind of brought in that this is something that we can do with any passion that we have or whatever it is that we're doing with our time. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a passion. It's whatever that we're putting our energy into, we can ascend it to the field of 963, which then it becomes something completely different. And that is exactly what ascended astrology is that when we bring it into the field, it becomes something different. So I just want to talk a little bit about what the ascended part of astrology has been for you? Because I know that even that in itself is a journey. And I want to kind of go to the first place of where this actually started and just kind of tell the story.
Okay. So I will say, I have a lot of connections with Arkansas, so it's so fascinating to me that Arkansas was at least the geographical space in which this information kind of showed up. But it was April of 2023, and it's one of those things where Jules, you always say it's not that, so what is it? And that's kind of the essence of how ascended astrology became, because I wasn't doing anything different. Like I said, I've always been in love with astrology. I love reading people's charts. I have hundreds of charts in my, software on my phone where anytime I meet someone, if there's an opportunity to, if they're even slightly interested, I'm like, oh yeah, like give me your information and I'll, read it for you. And that happened with my friend at the retreat in April. So didn't think anything of it. It was like the last night of the retreat. We were out by the fire on the lake, and she let me read her astrology. And, it's actually really interesting now thinking back to it because that was such a big honor. I didn't know that she actually had never shared that information with anybody before. And so that just feels really like near and dear to my heart. But we were out there, we were chatting about her chart for hours. And the way that I'm self-taught in astrology. So, I know a bunch of stuff, but I've always viewed it as more of a channeling. Once I kind of learned what that word was, at first I didn't know what was going on. I would just get information pouring through, right? And I was like, oh, this is cool. Then, I kind of labeled it as channeling, but that's just what happens. And so, we're sitting there and I'm giving her information about her chart for hours. And we just were in this beautiful container together. And then we were right at the end, and somebody else from the retreat comes out and caught like the very tail end of it. And she says, well, why don't you bring astrology to the platform? And I, in that moment, actually went into resistance, right? So you talk about this too of like, don't limit yourself. Like when the information comes in, what level of consciousness are you receiving it from? And in that moment, I was in the program, the absolute no, the astrology is in the matrix, therefore I can't bring it to the platform. So that's a really big moment for me because it was such a beautiful lesson, like organically given to me of like, don't limit yourself. Like if resistance comes up, like step back, right? Where is it coming from? And that was coming straight from my ego. It was just like, no, not possible. Like, how many times have I stopped myself in life, right? From that space of like, oh, this is not possible. So it's just very interesting. And yeah, so kind of just let it be. And then a couple days later, you were heading home from Arkansas and you called me and it just came through. And it's just been this beautiful co-creation of taking my passion for astrology and being able to ascend it through the DMT codes. And I will say that me, like the mini me, isn't doing anything. So I'm just in the intelligence of listen and do. And so that was April, is kind of the inception point of this. But since then, I have just stepped back in every single point on the journey. I've just said, show me what's next. And it's like, they won't shut up. I mean, literally, like, I'm just like constantly being given, the next step and how the intelligence wants to come through. So it's been so much fun.
Well, it's such a beautiful story. Yeah, I can remember driving and um the woman, Yvonne, I'm just gonna say her name. I was driving with her, and she's the one that kind of walked in at the end of the reading, and she was talking a little bit about it. And immediately I heard it's ascend astrology. And it wasn't the first time that I knew that this was going to happen, but I didn't know you did that. And I was so lit up because I knew at some point this was going to be huge, is to kind of move into the frequency of the field in order to read astrology. And I immediately, as soon as she said that, I was on the phone and I was calling you, and it's like, oh, we're gonna send astrology. And here we are, and it's happening, right? So for those of you that don't know about the YouTube channel, I'm gonna do a shout out for that. And I'll put it in the show notes as well, is the Ascended Astrology YouTube channel where we're doing readings and that sort of thing. But even more so, I'm going to do a little insertion here, and we'll definitely talk more about it at the end. But you can actually get an ascended astrology reading yourself. And Abriana is offering those, and we will give you that special offering at the end. So if something in you is like, well, how do I apply this to my life? These are
Mm.
certain ways that you can start to do that, because just like anything else, we're only seeing what we can see. And when we stay open to allowing to see what's beyond what we can see through our programming, everything begins to open up. And that's Abrienne is living that, and she's proving that. And I'm going to just say, I am just so honored to work with you because you really are an amazing being. I mean, you are showing up and you are saying yes to the intelligence every single day, and that isn't easy. And you and your family have said yes to some pretty big things in these last few months, even this last year. And I just really feel like we see you and we honor you. And it is something where we don't take that lightly, right? Because to live this life is a dedicated thing, and you're doing it.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much.
So from here, I feel like I'd like to go into a little bit of what the experience is for you. And I know this is something that is going to keep opening and blossoming, but a big part of bringing this through is the ability to see the other side. And I want to just and what I mean by that is bringing it into the field and stepping back and kind of being like, oh, well, what is it when we're not seeing it through our programming, and just kind of what some of this experience of that, and maybe some of the stuff that's coming in. Let's go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw that before you even started speaking about it because, excuse me, the way that it was shown to me first was on a very individual level, right? So that's where we started it with was with the self. And this part just lights me up because as someone who, has been in astrology for so long, there was always parts of my chart that would upset me, that would, like I would go, that I would get frustrated with and really identify in. So, for instance, I have a lot of Virgo energy. And in astrology, kind of what I was latching onto was that perfectionist, um, just identity. And it would stop me in my tracks so many times where I would get the information and it wouldn't be good enough. Right. So that was kind of my personal experience was I didn't know that I was doing this. Right. Like I was just kind of going along my life and being like, oh, this isn't good enough. I'm not gonna, share it with anybody. This isn't good enough. I'm not gonna post it anywhere. This isn't good enough. um, I'm not going to teach anybody this, and I just kind of was living my life that way. not realizing the programming behind it. And so when ascended astrology first came through, the first thing that we went to was the natal chart. So, what would life look like if we could unhook from hooking in? So, what I mean is,
Mhm,
if we could detach from the programs that we are hooking into through our natal chart.
mhm,
So, like, I got a bunch of Virgo energy, I see it in my natal chart, but instead of going into the program of what people have deemed Virgo energy, right, which is just a program, a belief, something that someone identified something as, instead of going in and seeing it as that, well, what is it on the other side? And so that was kind of where it started. Was I was able to bring through and any information that people needed to see in that moment of how the cosmos, the planetary energies are governing them, what programs they're hooking into there, and then using the tools to ascend that, meaning placing your natal chart, using our evolution symbol, and then going to the DMT codes.
mhm,
And it just, when I was able to see it mapped out, and that's actually what I call them now. So I'll say like Abriana's map, so and so's map, because it really is. It takes you with the evolution symbol and your natal chart, it takes you along a journey through the 12 houses and 6 DMT codes and unhooks you from what's governing you. And so that was kind of where it started. That was the individual level.
mhm,
And that's really what my readings are about, is unhooking you from where you're being governed. And now we're going to attune to the intelligence and bring you into limitless possibilities. If you weren't tied up in an identity, who could you be? Who would you want to be? Like, just, it's, it kind of comes down to the freedom. And I'm actually being reminded of Aquarius right now, right? Because we are in this space of freedom, but let's turn that inside out. What does it really mean? Um,
love that. So what I'm hearing as you speak is it's really putting down the limitations of our programmed reality, right? So the program body, the program mind, the program matrix, if you will, and allowing ourselves to consciously attune to the intelligence that's held in that source intelligence, let's just say. And then we start to see the possibilities behind beyond that, and that is where the freedom is, right? Because then we are free of the attachments of the programming that were keeping us where we were. So it really is, it's an ascension map. And I was seeing that as you were talking, and that it's a map that's always mastered. So as soon as we master a consciousness of what we're seeing the first time it's mapped, then we step back, we let it reattune, and then we step back in and we allow consciousness to move to the next. And so even just if it's done one time, we're always given a map of what's possible. But what I love about what you're doing is that it can be approached in different spaces of our linear year, even though it is very spherical in nature, and that can be held in spherical all the time, but we're always given, and I'll put this link down below too, because we just did the astrology forecast for the month and ascended it, so you can kind of tap into a little bit of what we're talking about there. But it gives us, so there's the map that's just done in the matrix, let's say, that we're reading, just straight up astrology. But then there's the ascended map that we can to attune into. So really what we're doing is we're raising our frequency of our body, we're raising the frequency of consciousness, and then we're attuning to the frequency of 963, which is the map. And I love that you're calling it that. This is the first time I've heard that. So I'm like, yes, it's an ascension map. Ascended astrology is the ascension map. So I want to talk, you did talk a little bit about the natal chart, but what would it be like when somebody comes to you and they're getting a personal reading?
Mhm.
What would they expect from that?
So the way that it has been laid out is that, right, because here's the thing is that I can read someone's natal chart for hours. But with the direction that we're moving, that wouldn't serve them at
Mm,
this point, right? So when someone comes in to a reading with me, they've already submitted their information to me. So I have the image of their natal chart, and we go through it together. So I have a document online, and we see it together. So now me and this person are it's the one to the two to the three, right? Me and the client are together looking at the natal chart, and we always start with the tuning, and so that we know that in that container we are seeing, hearing, feeling, knowing exactly what we need to for them in that container at that moment. And so we'll go through the natal chart, and we go through all the houses, 1 through 12 houses, and I kind of just talk to them a little bit about what I'm seeing. So, what planets are in your houses? What kind of transits are they making to each other? A little bit into personality, a little bit into how it could, so both how this could make you feel, but also how you could see this in your reality. So,
mhm,
we'll talk a little bit about that. Um, and that part's just really different for everybody. Like it's really different for everybody because there will be, and I've gotten this feedback before, but there'll be little things that I say to a specific person because you got to think about it. I mean, on a practical level, the 12 houses, the 12 signs, all the planets, like there's a million words that you could say in an astrology reading. But for whatever reason, the specific words that I say to people are exactly what they need to hear at that time. And so like that's been reflected back to me, which is really cool. Um, so it's like, yeah, it's always perfect and but always very different. And then from there, we'll look at, I do like to go into everybody's elements, kind of like, the earth, fire, water, air, because I feel like there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from there. And that always really resonates as well. And then we take it to the DMT codes. So that is setting up the 6 DMT codes on the evolution symbol. So it's like this tool, this journey that has already been created, right? But we're looking at it through a different lens. So we'll set up. I'll give them their 6 codes in that moment, and then read them as a sentence.
mm,
So really, what we're looking at is their ascended DNA. Like when you're born, all these energetic patterns are being impressed on you the moment you take your first breath in this time space continuum. We've talked about that a lot. Um, but now we're going to talk about your ascended DNA. So no longer like this, you know. Um, and so when I bring through the sentence of when I read the codes, it's always really fun to see. People have expressed that it's like their true blueprint. It's like it's like a deeper meaning or calling or purpose. So, and I encourage people not to get too attached to that because, like you said, like it's always like once you see it, okay, cool. What is it really, or what's next? But it's very empowering in that moment instead of just looking at, because we've identified with so many things through the years, but then you get like this new ascended
Mm.
version of that, and just to kind of feel into what that means for you moving forward. And then after we read the code, I will attune them with it. So then we'll do our attunement process again, kind of light up that ascended DNA again, and then pull the codes through. And that's the most exciting part, right? Because we create a field for them to step into. So the last part is that they get a master code. And that master code allows them to quick shift. So if you think about it, we're sitting down, we're in co creation with the natal chart, evolution technology, and the DMT codes. We create this field of energy that is your, ascended blueprint. And then at any point going forward, it's just like your home frequency. You can attune to it anytime you want.
Mm.
You just pull in that master code. So um, yeah, that, and then we'll have a little bit of time for reflection, but that's the
Amazing.
journey.
And I love that you end it with a master code for them to kind of just have that attuning process that they can keep going back into. What a journey. I mean, you could really feel the different frequencies as you were speaking of kind of what that experience would be like, and then kind of ending in this place of, oh, okay, so this is where it was and this is where it is now, and then being able to create a reality or self actualize in a frequency over an identity. It's so powerful and beautiful, and I feel like there's, it should be said here, is that through this experience they're actually getting coded to hold this higher frequency and to self actualize within that. So we're going to put the link below so that you can experience a reading with Abriana. And she's so gracious to be offering a 22% off discount code for that as well for your first reading. I definitely take advantage of that. Well, Abriana, I mean, I feel like there's been so many juicy moments in this. Is there anything that you feel you would like to say that hasn't been said?
I would like to just a little bit, I kind of want to give a precursor as to what's coming.
Mm.
So, and I'll shout out to the Ascended Astrology channel again, because the the magic that is coming through that channel is kind of unbelievable. So, what I mean by precursor is that I just want to touch on this because it feels really big, and I know that this is I want to keep it in spherical time as much as possible, but I want to bring it to this point in the moment of 2024 where Pluto enters Aquarius, because it feels so big, and it's a space in which nobody who is alive in this incarnation in the physical body has experienced this energetic pattern before. And so I just, I'm getting chills talking about it because I just keep hearing it's like, the time is now, the time is now. There's no better time for ascended astrology. So we have this opportunity to be playing in these energetic patterns that we haven't experienced, that we don't already have. Because on the astrology aspect of it, you can pull from the past, but
Mhm.
I feel like you're really grasping at that point. Like, if we just keep this in this moment and don't look for what this has been like in the past, our minds are going to be blown as to what is trying to come through, what is trying to show us. So that's kind of what they've been bringing through and how we've been playing in it recently. And so I just kind of wanted to put that out there as a precursor because, yes, this started as usual with the intelligence and self, and now it's just expanding. So it's been huge and just so much fun. So thank you.
I absolutely love that. So it really is, if you were to put a time stamp in the spherical, that no time, no space continuum, let's say, this is a pivotal moment where we all can step into that voided space that has no programming, right? It has no programming within us, and really self-discover within the intelligence that's held there because it's a gift. And what we were kind of asking, is Pluto the destroyer or the neutralizer? This is the opportunity to have every program neutralized and start in that frequency of 963. Feel the power in that. Like, that's how powerful we are in this. So let's take advantage of it, right? It's like that's the invitation here. And if you want to know specifically how you can take advantage of that, book a session with Abriana and she can read your map. So, woo, I'm like losing my voice. It's like taking my breath away. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I'm just like so lit up. Thank you, Abriana. This is
Thank you,
just
Joy.
so, it's just like, I hope you guys feel the power behind this because yes, we are ascending astrology here. Everything else needs to be ascended. So what in your life do you need to ascend? That's what it is to awaken the superhuman, is that that's what we're here to do. And if you're listening to this, this is what you're here to do, is to ascend beyond the matrix. So find your passion and go ascend it. And we're just sending you all so much love. Aubriana, thank you for bringing your brilliance. This was just this conversation blew me away. It's just so it's time, and I feel that. And we
Beautiful.
just want to thank everyone for listening, and definitely check out the links in the show notes for more information. But until then, we are just sending you all so much love and a big hug, and we are wishing you an inspiring journey as you ascend whatever in your life is ready to move beyond the matrix.
Mm.
Bye, everyone.